afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. The Atheist Experience is live July 7th, 2002. I'm Martin Wagner, your host. Ashley Perrien is my co-host.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this sunny Sunday afternoon. We're glad that all the big rainstorms are over.
Yes,
That's
apparently.
a good thing. We hope you all had a very fun 4th. We had a nice sort of laid-back 4th. It's
Okay.
It's like, well, we did, didn't we? Do you even not remember?
I forgot that you were there.
Yeah, my presence was just so commanding.
Duh.
You didn't have that much to drink. Good grief.
Okay, it was a time.
Remember we went and got a burger?
Yeah, I know.
all these things. All the sound of fireworks from down the street must have just rattled you, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, who knows?
Yes. Well, it's okay. I
And
forgive
the
you this
scream of
time.
cop sirens and being tackled to the ground.
Yeah. It was kind of a nice soul being able to avoid a lot of the sort of nonstop and very overt religious showboating that went along with most mainstream
Get together with a
celebrations of the 4th.
good couple friends and
Sure,
out there and bang on water drums.
That's it. All right. Okay. The show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, as you can see by our old sign that we need to get rid of and replace. I've been meaning to do that now for several weeks.
Yes.
So, but this is the time.
Slowly coming.
Well, I got the phone number now, so we're going to do that. Atheist Community of Austin is a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop, 307 West 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca downtown, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series in the Longhorn Room of First Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Now, today being the first Sunday of July, we had our lecture series today, which of course I missed. I never make it to any of the Sunday morning things, darn it, and I really should be better about that. But I know that today we heard from a representative from the Texas Freedom Network.
Yes.
About the problem with the fundamentalists trying to dominate what goes into school textbooks.
Yes.
So in a second, we'll get you, since you attended, you're going to go
over a little bit of that.
Go over a few of some of the details of what she talked about. It's really amazing how the Christians want to transform, particularly like civics and social studies.
Yep.
In
Take out every bit of education in our education.
Yes, it's sort of like, make schools for indoctrination, not education. Seems to be the agenda that they have.
Let's show them Mary Poppins. That's a good education. Mm-hmm. Don't knock Mary and send them home.
All right. Well, but they're then they must be about to really, really hate this new. Have you heard about this new Mary Poppins that's getting remade? I
have heard one thing about that somewhere. What I don't know anything about it though.
Something about Maria Poppins, the Hispanic. Sort of that. Apparently, this is actually being discussed amongst Hollywood. Not to say there's anything wrong with it. I mean, if the movie's going to have to stand or fall on its own merits with its script or whatever. But the fundies are going to just probably go berserk about, there's political correctness again. How dare we depict, Hispanics as anything at all? So sort of, crazy. Anyway. There's lots of stuff that we like to do as members of the ACA, isn't there? Yes, there is. Godless Gamers is one of those things. Happens Monday nights, 7 o'clock p.m. at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser. ACA Happy Hour is a Thursday evening thing that takes place about 7:38ish at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is located near the intersection of I-35, 183, and people trickle in all evening to that. That's a fun evening event. Our radio show, The Nonprofits, can be heard every Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. on the atheistnetwork.com website. Your web browser will need the Real Player plugin in order to hear the audio stream. This is a weekly 90-minute internet radio show hosted by Jeff D. Vic Farrow is one of the co-hosts, Mary McManamy, who's been on our show on occasion, and Russell Glasser, of course, runs the show as he does this one and pipes in, and so it's all kinds of fun to listen to. And then there's a chat feature. They don't do call-in. They're working, as I understand, still on eventually maybe trying to get call-in happening, but for now there's a live chat room that you can interact with the show that way. They didn't have a radio show yesterday, apparently, I guess for holiday reasons.
Well, I think Jeff was out of town, and Vic couldn't do it for one reason or another, and so
Russell just said the heck with it.
Yeah, instead of doing it alone. So.
Yeah, why not? I mean, deserves a break. He's got the the baby and all. Just why not have a family time for the holiday weekend? That's appropriate. Okay, Godless Americans March on Washington is still tentatively slated for November the 2nd. This is an event sponsored by American atheists with whom ACA is not affiliated, but we've joined them in many of their little activist efforts, and it could be very interesting, a lot of fun. If nothing else, it'll be a nice opportunity to see Washington again.
Yeah.
So, and I think it would be nice if we had one or two of our people.
Yeah, we had a presence there.
Yeah, I have a presence there at that, and boy, the timing could not be more.
When is it again?
Well, it's November 2nd, so it's still several
Okay.
months away, but it will still be close enough that I think. By that time, of course, the September 11th anniversary events will have happened.
Yeah.
And I suspect that there will be a great deal of religious showboating in conjunction with some of those. It's not to say that people don't have that First Amendment right to express that, but I'm worried that the government is, government representatives are going to get in and they're going to probably make a bunch of offensive statements. So, but who knows? It remains to be seen. And of course, I think memory is still going to be fresh about the whole pledge flap recently.
Yeah.
So again, this is it's a good opportunity for atheists and unbelievers in America to again just wave and say we're out here. Don't overlook us. We are a sizable part of the population.
We're a 15% major population here.
Or
Wake
something.
up.
Well, it's the 14-15% is the non-religious Americans, and that ranges from anything from outspoken atheists like us to people who may very well be theistic. They just don't have any use for church or preachers or any sort of religious establishment. So, but anyway. So those are the announcements, as I understand it. Let's see what else is going on. A new issue of Skeptical Inquirer, I've noticed, has just hit the stands. We don't need to go into a close-up on that, but this looks like a fun one. Subject this time is Science and Pseudoscience in Russia. Russia is still, opening its doors and trying to, experiment with this great thing called, a free society, and it's still very much of a problem over there. And pseudoscience is running rampant over there because the skeptical point of view is not even really heard.
Yeah.
And so a great deal of pseudoscience has made inroads in actual scientific circles in Russia, and so that's turning into a problem. So anyway, this is always a fun magazine to read. I recommend it highly. That's it. Let's go ahead and go to news today.
Okay.
Well, actually, first off, let's talk about the what was discussed today at the lecture series, because that's very interesting.
Yep. At the lecture today, we had Heather Alden, I want to say, was the name. She was basically a representative from Texas Freedom Network, and basically talking about they're going to be having a process for the social studies textbooks.
Okay.
It's coming up, actually, I think the final decision is made in November. And it's basically, the publishers get together and make all the different textbooks that they want to have reviewed. They put them forth, and then they go through a couple different review processes. The first one is just, they go down a checklist of, okay, we need to make sure that the kids learn about, X, Y, and Z. Here's all the different topics that are on our list. Make sure that those are in the books. If it's not, that book gets tossed out. Then it goes on to a set of reviewers who actually read the book and find any factual errors. And factual could mean that, was this country founded in, 1776 or 1932?
Hopefully we're not... Hopefully education hasn't plummeted so far in our country that we're debating that one. But it wouldn't surprise me.
It would not surprise me, given what else they're trying to get out of these books. Now, like I say, factual errors, sometimes they're fairly obvious.
Okay, so who are the, I guess, either conservative groups or religious groups specifically that are targeting public school textbooks for their own purposes of spreading their particular agenda in terms of the way they want to see American life portrayed?
From my understanding, and like I say, it was kind of simplified. Most talked about textbooks and the process and stuff like that. But it's a panel of 15 elected members who go through and decide this. 6 of them are heavily on the religious right side. And so they're basically looking for any reference to anything that's non-biblical and basically get it struck out of the books. And also, before these actually even go to final print and get to that board, they are read by a couple in Texas, Mel and Norma Gabler in East Texas. They'll drive the first copy of the textbook out to them. They get a chance to read it over.
Who's this couple?
Let's see. Some publishers go so far as to court the favor of longtime textbook reviewers Mel and Norma Gabler in East Texas by driving first drafts of textbooks to their home for review.
But who are they?
From my understanding, they're just a couple that's made a lot of noise in the past. They have just complained and nagged and moaned and just...
Do they have academic credentials? Do they, I mean...
I want to say...
what do they do for... Is he a plumber? What do they...
I believe that she was a teacher for like 30 years.
Okay.
And so that's her academic credential that she'll toss around everywhere.
Okay.
But yeah, from my understanding, they don't have any official right to this stuff. But in the past years, whenever this has come up before, they have made such a stink about it that now they just go to them first and say, okay, here it is. Go
well, now, there's got to be something more to it than that, okay? Because, I mean, hey, I'm sure there's lots of people who make stinks about things, but you don't get these public bodies, you know, like school boards, or they drive, so, oh, okay, well, we better drive out to this individual citizen's house and let them make the decision as to what, you know, we do in terms of matters of policy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's people who complain about what the White House does all the time.
Yes.
But George Bush doesn't drive out to, you know, Joe Blow from Idaho's, you know, ranch and say, well, you know,
him on public.
Yeah, what do you think I ought to do about, you know, Enron? You know, so I mean, there's got to be something more. I mean, these people must have some. There's got to be some kind of connection.
I don't know what it is. I read over this article here. We talked about it today at the lecture.
Yeah.
Nothing else was brought up. Just that.
But we don't know. Okay, so what have been
the?
Okay, so you say they've been pissing and moaning about what's been in the textbooks for years. What are the natures of their complaints? That they're not Christian enough, or what?
Basically, yes. They want to get the number of textbooks because basically.
What I understand, sorry to interrupt.
Can we have our...
From what I understand from the lecture...
Do you not have a mic in the main room?
This will come up. It's loud enough.
Okay.
Sorry.
Here's our producer, Russell Glasser, folks.
Yeah. From what I understand in the lecture...
you have to lean in more. There you go. Get on. Come on, Russell. Don't be shy.
Basically, she's just on the school board, and it's not that hard to get on the school board, but it requires a lot of time and commitment, and... The fundamentalists have a big interest in being on the boards, so they have people with time and commitment.
Okay, but this family then they actually drive the textbook drafts, this manuscripts, out to this couple's home.
Yeah,
yes.
Are they on the? They are the ones on the board.
I don't think they're actually on the board necessarily. Okay. I'm not positive about that.
So okay, well thanks, Russell.
Okay.
So I'm at an absolute loss to understand what grounds or what sort of legal standing these folks have to, unless it's just being given to them by the textbook committee or whatever board it is. What's the name of the specific board now that decides what goes in the textbooks? There's got to be a name to this body.
Texas State Board of Education. State Board of Education. Okay. Holds hearings on the books. Okay.
And so the State Board of Education, let me see if I understand this correctly. The State Board of Education, which is a state institution, so therefore it's an elected body, so it's a government body.
Yes.
Okay, is driving manuscripts of school textbooks out to the home of a couple of fundamentalist Christians to make sure that the textbooks are sufficiently Christian?
I would assume that they may have something to say about it, but the way that it was posed this morning was more along the lines of the publishers are actually giving them the first copies.
Okay,
and then they go through and correct it.
This is just strange. This is just
really
weird.
And then they ship it back, and then they get the second draft.
Correct it how? I mean, are they correcting it for mistakes, or correcting it say, oh, this isn't pro-Christian enough, or this isn't presenting...
Yes, for factual errors that they find, and also for, bias problems.
Bias in terms of not being pro-Christian enough?
Yes. Not having the correct family values. I think they had taken out... it just slipped my mind.
I'm amazed that this hasn't been legally challenged.
Yeah.
I mean, who gives a crap what this couple thinks? I mean, I'm sorry. If they have some sort of academic standing, or if they were elected to this position by the voters in Texas,
that's one thing.
Okay, then that I can understand that. But I'm just puzzled here. There's got to be some sort of under the table going on.
And if there is something, if anyone out there knows anything about Mel and Norma Gabler and how they get their early copies, I'd love for you to call in and tell us what's up with that.
Okay, I'm gonna investigate these people because Mel and Norma Gabler. What did Ms. Alden have to say? Did she have any information about them specifically, or did she just mention that they were?
Not really, not specifically on them.
Okay, well, I can't imagine that the Texas Freedom Network doesn't know something about this, hasn't investigated this couple.
Again, that wasn't really gone into with that much depth.
Oh, okay.
Because they are annoyed at them. Because when the Texas Freedom Network gets a copy of these books to look at it, it is already after they have messed with it.
Okay.
Because again, the publishers give them first drafts.
Yeah.
They go through and scratch out pieces that they don't like and say change this and whatnot. The publishers go back and take some of that into account.
So the publishers aren't obligated to do what this couple says?
I would expect not.
Right. I mean, because then you'd be talking about all sorts of like weird censorship issues.
Yeah.
And how could they possibly... But
And so
still...
then basically the publisher corrects it, reprints another copy, and then it goes to the board, and then they get the crack at it.
I'm just I'm just utterly nonplussed that this couple has been given this power, and I'm just not understanding what the reasons were.
Yeah.
And how it is that they got this clout and got to be in this position.
I don't know.
Of being, the two people in Texas who pretty much have the final say on what every student in Texas learns. There's something weird about this, and it's. Now I really wish I got it. Now I'm just really going to set my alarm clock and drink like 27 cups of coffee when I get them, just make sure I'm awake for these meetings, because I really would have hammered Ms. Gebler about this. I mean, I would want to know, who are these people?
Yeah.
I'm sure some questions were asked, right? I mean, because most of our people were there, and we get, and at our lecture series, all our folks, we ask questions a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And a lot of it was more in the process after it gets to the board and stuff like that. How is the board composed? Yeah. What can you do to...
Okay, maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill about this one thing, but it just seems to be such a bizarre ingredient in the whole process that I'm not sure. Okay, well, we don't want to belabor the point too much, but anyway.
But anyway.
What kind of shenanigans has happened in the past that the TFN tells us we need to be concerned about?
Yeah. It's the kind of things now on this board, like I said, I think it's a 15-member panel.
Okay.
And 6 of them are heavily on the religious right, and so they basically vote as a block. So that's 6 votes that are going this way or that way for a certain sentence in the book.
Right. And so
the kind of things that they're going, last time they reviewed social studies textbooks in 1996, a perceived overkill of emphasis on cruelty to slaves in history textbooks. We were very mean to them, but you shouldn't point that stuff out. That's bad history. We don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
Required pictures of family to include both a mother and a father. Including the birth
and white, I assume.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Of course. I think I'll get to that. Including the birth of Jesus Christ on historical timelines.
Oh, okay. It's something that has not even been established historically.
Yes, but it's got to be on the timeline then.
Yeah.
Determining.
So are they going to have this 8-year period where it's like may have happened here? You just have this sort of like a bracket saying
fluff period.
Yeah. It's possible that this character, whose actual existence hasn't conclusively been proved, was born within this vague 8-year period at a certain point.
We have hard timelines for when Kennedy was shot, First World War, and Second World War, but in that one, they just got a little gray band.
Yeah. Somewhere in here.
Determining the age of the Earth by biblical genealogy rather than fossil evidence. Biblical genealogy. The family history. Of a book that hasn't been proved to have any value.
A book that says...
About people who live 900 years, supposedly.
Yes, exactly. A book that says people used to live for 900 years.
That's
okay, so clearly...
moronic.
Okay, so clearly the agenda is to completely Christianize the schools.
Yes.
Right? Turn schools into Christian indoctrination camps.
Yes, and also basically, if it's something bad, the kids don't need to hear it. Eliminating discussions of social issues like homelessness, drug use prevention, endangered animals, and the environment. Those are bad things. We don't need children hearing about them.
Yes, of course, because if you know that if you just don't talk about bad things, they go away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
A perceived overemphasis on civil rights, George Washington's religious beliefs, and the biblical basis for the Declaration of Independence.
Okay. Okay, so they're not even making a pretense of not wanting.
The religious people on the board are very, very open about what they want and what they don't want. They're not hiding this and trying to go, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
They are overtly religious.
Yeah. So this is very reminiscent of like a society that used to exist where, you had if you wanted to be part of the special elite, you had to trace your Aryan heritage back to the 1700s. Yeah. Stuff like that, that kind of history.
Yeah, and they've had pictures taken out of these books, too. They have 2 pictures here, which I'm not going to bother to focus in on.
Yeah,
too small and grainy.
Fuzzy,
Critics said publishers went overboard by including too many pictures of minorities in history textbooks, and they got a picture, of minority African American family.
Yeah,
but that's not truly American.
Yeah, I mean.
So get that replaced with a white family, and we'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for goodness sake, just how what an outrageous, offensive thing it is to have a picture of a smiling African American family.
I know. I mean, come on, that can't be true.
Yeah.
So I mean, come on, where's the?
All right. And what's this other one over here?
The other one is a mother coming out of her house with a briefcase. That undermines family values. Women should not be leaving the home.
Yes, that's right.
Get your butt back in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So.
Barefoot and pregnant.
Exactly. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
They've had ones in a health textbook.
I can just imagine this.
They had a line drawing
yes.
of a female breast.
Okay.
That was removed. It's a line drawing.
Okay.
Come on, people. This is a health class.
So it was a diagram, right, to show what.
Apparently.
Yeah. So remember, yes. So the position there that they're trying to reinforce is no one actually has sex organs, people. They're all optical illusions. So just if you close your eyes, you know, and pretend that you know you don't actually have anything between your legs. It's all a big lie from Satan.
Yes.
Good.
It's absolutely horrendous.
I mean, you just have to. It just boggles the mind. The thought processes of these people. I mean, what sort of? How do they think? This is what I want to know. Well, obviously,
they don't.
The agenda here is, of course, to promote their specific brand of fundamentalist Christianity,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But what I find boggling is how it is specifically they think that suppressing certain facts, about life that anyone can clearly observe,
yes,
will in any way improve everyone's quality of life.
Yes, this is not in contention.
Like pretending social problems don't exist doesn't make them go away.
Yeah.
Okay. So how is it that they have arrived at this conclusion that we can't really talk about stuff that's bad? Yeah. We really don't want to, make slavery out to be. Slavery wasn't all that bad a thing. I mean,
No.
It's just, because otherwise we would all just been out on the street, I guess, right, or something.
Problems do not go away by sticking your fingers in your ears, closing your eyes, and going la la la.
Mm-hmm. But
that's not the way to solve problems, people.
But how do they think that society will improve? Well, it's so patently illogical. You can't just give a sensible answer to the question. I know.
Yeah.
But wow, it's just
flabbergasted over this whole thing.
Okay, so clearly, people with brains need to fight this effort. So what is being done by the Texas Freedom Network to combat it, and how can just members of the public get involved?
Yeah. What you can do is actually, they have meetings and board hearings and stuff like that, and you can actually go there and say, look, we need to have these things included in textbooks. There's two ways to go about it. You can actually read the textbook and say, look, this is a good part, this needs to be included, this isn't correct, whatever. Or you can just go there with a generalized statement of, look, we need to be able to teach this stuff in our books. Either one, you can do. And basically, it's just get information from their website and see how you can help out there.
Are there public hearings? I assume are there?
Yes. Yes. And I think the first one they said was on the 17th. I want to say of this month. So it's just like in the upcoming week or something like that.
And where's that happening? Do you know?
I'm not sure on that. They basically said they're going to sit this one out mostly, but they have like 4 hearings in total.
Why are they sitting this one out?
They weren't really clear on that one. I think maybe for time. They said basically when they do this, they're going to take a look at what the other group is basically focusing on, which books they're actually going after.
Okay, so they're going to, the first hearing they want to hear what
the argument
the religious right is targeting, and then they'll be prepared for the next hearing.
Exactly.
Okay, well
exactly.
That makes sense.
And like I say, I think they said there's 4 hearings anyway.
Right, sure.
So sitting this first one out.
Okay. Well, they're going to be, I'm sure they're observing and recording and making notes, and just letting the religious right have its say, and then they'll come back and attack them at the next one. Okay, well that's interesting. Now I noticed that in some of the examples that they're talking more. The examples that you gave are more having to do with social issues. And like political issues and history.
It's a social studies textbooks this year.
Okay, so it's not necessarily science textbooks this year. Although I'm sure in the past, they've done science textbooks, and so at that, so the creation versus evolution was
Yes,
a
this
big
does come
crazy.
up, but each year it's different topics for different grades and stuff like that. And so,
although the thing is, though, with creationism versus evolution, there are now sufficient court precedents. Every single time evolution in school textbooks has been challenged by people on the religious right and in the anti-science community, it has been upheld by school boards. The scientific community has finally gotten serious about rallying and explaining exactly why it is that evolution is in fact science and creationism isn't.
yes.
And
Yeah.
when the overturning of the Kansas decision and subsequent decisions in states like Hawaii and Arizona and New Mexico have pretty much, the fight still needs to continue to make sure that science is accurately represented in textbooks.
Yes.
But at least with the evolution controversy, there are now legal precedents out there
Yes.
to protect and make sure that evolution is at least to some degree legally protected.
Yeah.
We don't have these kinds of precedents with things like
for social issues.
you shouldn't talk about working women because they're all Jezebels anyway. So we need to, so we need to teach that women having jobs is like evil and sinful and godless. So and what's this whole thing?
They're trying to get creationism taught in schools as a science. Creationism taught in schools as a science. Now, other than the obvious only objection, it's not one. Other than that, I think it would be great, because it would definitely be the shortest class of the day. Welcome to Creationist Science. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the seventh day, He rested. See you at the final.
Is that Bill Hicks? Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually goes in here. Social studies texts, which include economics, psychology, and history.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of the focus of the books this year.
I see. Okay.
So
interesting. Well, it's certainly a fight. There is this sort of. We have seen evidence of this before in our program and things like when we were in the big studio, when we used to have shows where we just invite all members of the ACA to come down and
we should do more of those.
Oh well, yeah. Unfortunately, it's a space problem. But remember how the outraged phone calls that would result when some of our families came by and brought the kids, and so
they're poisoning the little one.
So there are people in the religious right who seem to think that they have this eminent domain over the minds of all American children. That's a lot of what the pledge flap is about, and the furor surrounding the pledge flap is about. And so clearly, it is what is behind this whole textbook now debate. So
yeah, and it was actually pointed out.
People who are concerned about the quality of education really have to get involved in this, and they can go to tfn.org, right? That's the Texas Freedom Network website, and get information about exactly what the problem is.
Yeah. Another thing that was struck out, which I just pointed out, I forgot about that. Environmentalist paper recycling talks about paper recycling, that it saves trees and such, was struck out because that's just propaganda, environmentalist propaganda. So.
But do they have an actual logical objection to recycling? Do they actually have a scientific argument that says recycling is dumb and a waste of time?
I have heard of articles. I haven't actually seen any studies where it's not a very efficient process. It could, there are problems with it, but those are problems to be worked out.
Yeah.
Not to say that we shouldn't teach about it because that's just environmentalist propaganda.
Right. It's like all of their objections to things are they're angry, emotional arguments, but do they actually have facts to back their position up?
I would say probably not. If they're religious, probably not.
Okay, well, we've gone on for some length about this, and let's
again,
go.
If you're interested, it's tfn.org, and they'll have a whole bunch of information there if you want to check it out.
Yeah, I can try and get that up on the air.
So.
Let's go ahead. I know we're half an hour into the show anyway, but there's tfn.org web address. You don't have a whole lot of news today, so let's go ahead and just go through it while they put the phone number up on the screen, and we'll just let the phone calls start to stack up while you're doing the news.
Okay.
But that's an important thing to talk about, and I'm glad that we spent some time on it because,
absolutely.
Okay. We'll have ramifications for the future. Depending, it's the education that our kids get now will determine what kind of country we live in 40 years.
Yep. So what kind of news we'll be reading in 40 years from now. Mm-hmm. So, okay, not too much. It was pretty light news week, actually. First one, fossil evidence of earliest land walker.
Oh.
A fossil found in 1971 has been newly identified as the earliest known animal built to walk on land, a salamander-like creature that marked a previously unknown stage in the evolution of fish into the ancestors of all vertebrates alive today. The identification helps close a hole in the early fossil record of a group of creatures called tetrapods. The gap, or Romer's gap, has had stumped scientists seeking to chart the evolution of the first four-limbed creatures with backbones. Tetrapods were the first animals known to walk on Earth and are the ancestors of today's mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and birds.
Okay.
Discovery of a nearly complete skeleton in the middle of Romer's gap should help in establishing the pattern of evolutionary change among early tetrapods.
Interesting.
So,
Okay,
yep.
so now they have a starting point from where they can work forward.
Yeah, and kind of go from there.
And start to,
And I think it was actually mentioned in this article that, the record picks up again in 20 to 30 million years. So they're little gaps, but they're slowly being closed. We just plugged in one gap. So
Well,
just a matter of
science
time.
is an ongoing process, is it not?
Yes.
And that's what makes it exciting.
Yes. We will learn something tomorrow.
Always new things to learn. It's now not a thing of, oh, here's all the answers, now don't ask any more questions. Science is, the process of investigation remains the most powerful one we have.
Okay. Court strikes down the same-sex law. Little Rock, Arkansas. The Supreme Court ruled Friday that a law barring sexual relations between people of the same gender was an unconstitutional invasion of privacy. The legislature passed the law in 1977 and apparently has never been used to prosecute anyone. The 7 plaintiffs challenged the law, therefore, because they don't want their conduct to be considered illegal. So nobody was actually prosecuted for this.
But this is a law
but it's still something that shouldn't have been in there in the first place.
Shouldn't have been in there in the first place, and clearly it's utterly irrelevant today. So it's just going now through the formality of getting it stupid, pointless laws out off the books.
Yeah.
And
based
upon outmoded ideas.
Yeah, and I like the dissenting opinion by 2 justices said that the court should not act because there was no criminal case brought under the law. The plaintiffs failed to show an actual threat of prosecution or harm from the law's existence, the dissent said. Yeah. So basically, we never prosecuted anybody else. Why should we take it out now?
Well, the fact that it's never
we haven't had a chance to flex our muscles yet.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the fact that it was never used in a prosecution means that it just was pointless and didn't need to be there, cluttering up the books. So let's get it out of there. Yep. It's like an old piece of furniture in your house you don't use anymore. Just chuck it.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point?
Do you want to go on? Or?
No, let's go on. A couple more.
Okay.
And there's not much this week.
This one was actually pretty good. This was talking to Judge Goodwin, who was actually one of the judges on the Ninth Circuit Court.
Oh, right.
About the pledge ruling.
Okay.
And basically talking about his reaction to the ruling. Senior Judge Alfred Goodwin said Friday that he wasn't surprised by the furor over his ruling on the Pledge of Allegiance. I never had much confidence in the attention span of elected officials for any kind of deep thinking about important issues, Goodwin says. When they pop off after what I call a bumper strip headline, they always give a superficial response. And I like this one. I mean, I hope this doesn't reflect badly on the guy. I love it. I love this. I'm a little disappointed in our chief executive, who nobody ever accused of being a deep thinker, for popping off.
Well, I mean, I guess he figures, hey, everyone's already pissed off at me for this.
Yeah, everybody's yelling at him enough. Why not give him some
say what he
more,
wants at this point? Well, he has a point clearly about the way in which the whole flap has been distorted and misrepresented in the media.
Yes. The media is reading other headlines in other newspapers and writing stories based on the headline, not on the story.
Well, and you notice how it seems like especially in all corporate media outlets, right? Anytime now for the last couple of weeks when they've had the story about this whole pledge flap, they always seem to run these same stock photos or video clips, the same stock images.
Yes.
Of sweet, innocent little doe-eyed children.
Doe-eyed children?
Yeah, doing the pledge, which seems to me clearly designed to inflame viewers into thinking that this is a big assault by evil, godless liberals, on America's kiddies, and they're all out to, attack the kiddies.
Yeah, we want to go there and handcuff the little kids and put them in jail for saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Which of course is, is completely ludicrous, but that's. But that seems to be all they've got, isn't it? I mean, has there been an actual legally sound argument against the Ninth Circuit's decision made.
Not that I've heard.
I don't know. Not that I've heard. And because, of course, what the real decision is about, and you've got the printout of it, and I've read it on the web. It's not about saying the act of saying the words under God being unconstitutional in and of themselves.
Yeah.
What there was a law in California that required school students to engage in, I think as it's put in the ruling, there's some sort of patriotic expression, and the Pledge of Allegiance will serve that purpose just because it's there and it's convenient. So what you had there then was students being required by law to say the pledge, and which, if it didn't include the under God clause, wouldn't be a problem.
Fine.
Yeah, wouldn't be a problem. But the thing is, the
And
assertion
actually,
of under God makes a patriotic pledge. It turns it into a religious statement, which the First Amendment clearly prohibits.
Yeah.
And that was what was behind the whole.
And just to make it blatantly clear about what actually was ruled unconstitutional and such, it wasn't the kids required to say it because the kids are not required to say it. The school is required to have some kind of pledge, some kind of patriotic act.
Yeah.
Because individual students, I can say, look, it's against my religious beliefs or whatever, therefore
Sure.
I won't say it. So every kid in the class, technically,
Well, yeah, I mean,
could opt out of
the
it,
Supreme Court has
but
ruled.
the school has to provide that.
Yeah.
So.
And the problem here that the conservatives aren't also seeing is that, okay, yes, the Supreme Court has said that if you want to remain seated and abstain from saying the pledge, you have the right to do that.
Yes.
But the problem, of course, is that what it does is it puts this big, there's
Yes.
this big light on you and it
Yes.
divides the class
You're
up
in the
into,
spotlight.
the kids standing up, and of course, if there's one kid conspicuously sitting down, and you all that kid's going to have problems socially, mixing in with his
And it
peer
has been
group.
ruled that the government should not have the power to do that.
Yeah.
The government should not have that coercive power
Yeah.
to basically point at you and say, well, you're not like the rest of us.
Yeah.
So,
That's yeah. So
even though they can opt out, this is still something the school should not be doing.
And we've
period.
seen in which any time in which any sort of religious speech is introduced into a school environment, that does happen. Okay, the kid who doesn't want to be part, okay, gets hammered. There was a news article that I reported on some time ago, back when Jeff was still host. There was an incident in Louisiana, I believe it was Baton Rouge, but I may be wrong, in which there was a young, and this was long before September 11th, but there was a young Muslim girl. This was like 12 years old, that age group.
Okay.
A young Muslim girl in this public school in this town in Louisiana. For Christmas, the principal of the school handed out little New Testaments to everybody. Like, as they were coming off the school bus, the principal is standing there handing out frickin' New Testaments, okay? And this little girl said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And the principal said, take it. Like, don't give me any lip, take it. And when other students noticed that there was this problem, they started asking this girl, why didn't you want to take the New Testament? And she said, oh, well, my family's not Christian, we're Muslim. And the reaction she got was this firestorm of hate descended upon her. She was told, she was called everything, Satan worshiper. She was told that she was going to hell, that her parents were going to hell. And essentially, so the principal of the school made this 12-year-old girl a pariah.
Yes.
And
put her in the spotlight.
Yeah.
That should not.
But that created a flap. But unfortunately, you can't. So the government can't do that crap to little kids who can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the whole thing. It's time to take a call. They've backed up and they've been waiting for some time.
Cool.
We're going to see what Jill on line 1 has to say. Jill, you're on the air.
Hi guys, it's
How you
Jill
doing?
from ACA.
Hey.
Hi, I was just calling to respond to some of your questions earlier about the textbooks and the Gablers.
Oh, yes.
You were asking why the publishers would forward the textbooks on to them for review.
Yes.
The first point is it's not just them. There's several organizations that show up to all these meetings, and they all have innocuous-sounding names, but it's basically religious right organizations. And the publishers, and basically their mission is to get books that they don't like thrown out. So the publishers make all this investment in putting these books together and getting them published, and they're just going to get thrown out. So that's why they're censoring themselves ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that's why they're giving them to these people.
But I think the flap that Martin argued about with the Gablers is that they get pre-release copies before the board gets them. Because as these people, as TFN was saying, they get the books after the Gablers have already gone through it and picked it apart. So,
Right.
But well, Jill's
So
indicating that
that's-
there are other people though who are also involved
Yes.
in that pre-school board review process.
well, no, they're actually on the board.
Oh, okay.
They're actually members of the board.
Oh, so they're members of the board. Okay,
Yes,
well,
and they go through and get the book.
so why do they get this nice curb service of having the text delivered to their home? I mean, do other members of the board, other members of the
exactly
board demand
why,
that?
why
I mean,
they get the early copies
Yeah.
and delivered to their home? That I'm not too sure.
there's
about.
just something there that's fishy and smells like fish. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just,
but they're not actually members of the board. The Gablers, they're
Okay,
just people who show up to these meetings.
okay, so
Yeah,
that makes it
they've
even
been-
weirder. Okay, so we need to figure out, okay, whether they're members of the board, they're not members of the board, we need to figure out. I really want to investigate these people and see who they are.
I'm sitting here looking at their website,
Oh,
Martin.
they have a
they have one.
website. Okay. Well,
www.
let's not advertise what their URL is over the air. We don't
Okay.
need to give it, but you can, if you want to send like a post to the atheist list, and then I'll look at it, and then maybe next week we'll talk a little bit more about these folks and
Yeah, definitely post something up on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
See it.
Yep, you got it.
well, hang on. Why not? That's not fair. In the interest of journalistic fairness, go ahead. What's their URL?
Okay, that's www.textbookreviews.org.
Okay.
And it's basically a profile of this couple, and they've been doing this for 20 years. They've been on 60 Minutes, 2020.
Okay.
So it's
Okay. So let's
interesting.
find out. So you get some information. So they're not like these obscure, folks living in a cabin somewhere. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. So their website and its information, and I was concerned that if there's any sort of anything
Yeah.
commercial or fundraising on it, but if it's just all right.
No, there's not.
Okay, so
Okay,
it's just
cool.
textbookreview.org, and you can get to who they are and what their point of view is on that. Well, I'll definitely check that out.
Okay.
Okay, Jill, anything else?
That's it.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, well,
Thank
we'll
you
talk
much.
to you later.
All right, bye.
Okay, well, that was very helpful. All right, Daniel is on line 2. Let's see what Daniel has to say. Daniel?
Yes.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, I just had a quick question, and I was
Yes.
going to let you guys go because I have to go, but I'm taping it, so I'll view your response. I actually had a quick question about your experiences, stands, and opinions about the Universalist Unitarian Church. And that's my question, and I'll watch your response later. Thanks,
Okay,
guys.
thanks,
Okay.
and have a good day.
Thank
You
you.
too.
I personally don't have... what?
No. I'm going to say the same thing.
Yeah, well, then, David Clark,
yes.
who used to be the co-host of the show, he's since moved out to the East Coast, knew the local UU folks really well, and
He
had
actually
very...
spoke there a couple times, I think.
He spoke at some of their, I guess they're called services, right? Even, and had very, very nice things to say about them. So what I've heard is that they're a great bunch of folks. The Unitarian Universalists, as I understand it, it's this sort of... It's not really a religion. It's just an attempt to welcome people of all beliefs or no belief or whatever into sort of a social community.
Yeah.
That takes maybe a church model in terms of bringing
Yeah.
folks together
Yeah, from
socially.
my understanding, it was based on the church model,
Yeah.
but it didn't have any specific beliefs to it.
But they allow speakers from varying points of view
Yeah.
to come and so there's a variety of opinions and philosophies and beliefs.
Yeah. Which would be interesting to
spoken
hear
on.
about different views like that. And
Yeah.
see what other people have to say.
So that's what I understand that you use about, but personal experience with them. But everything that we've heard about them has we've heard very nice things, and we did have one of the fellows who I think is one of the top guys, or again, do you call them ministers? Who is he?
I don't know.
The fellow who was one of the big figures in local UU
Okay.
spoke in January at our separation of church and state rally on the Capitol steps. Back in January 12th, that was.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of our speakers,
Yeah.
got behind the podium, said a few things.
Okay.
And he seemed like a very nice guy.
Okay.
He had some rhetoric that I thought was a little odd. I think that he referred to freedom as America's religion or something like that. I was thinking he used some rhetoric that would not have been my choice, but he still seemed like it was valuable to have his point of view, and he seemed like a really nice guy.
Okay.
So, all right.
Cool.
Jeremy is on line 3. Jeremy.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi. I'm 22 years old, and in high school I was a hardcore Southern Baptist.
Uh-huh.
And then when I got to college, I walked away from Christianity.
Mhm.
And that was 3 years ago.
Okay.
And principally, I'm calling to ask, what do you think is the best yardstick for morality?
Oh, good.
Recently, my uncle, who is also, is a Southern Baptist Christian hardliner, posed the question to me. He said, if God is not watching over us, and if there is no judgment day, then what is to keep me from killing you?
We've heard that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and initially the question infuriated me, but now I just laugh about it.
Well, who is this again?
This is my uncle, my
Your
mom's
uncle.
brother.
Your uncle. Okay, so your own uncle is asking you, if there's no judgment and if there's no God to fear.
Maybe he shouldn't be tempting you.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. I mean, my initial response would have been, does it actually occur to you to kill me at all? Okay, I mean, ask him, if you found out tomorrow, let's just hypothetically speaking, if this guy found out tomorrow that, that Christianity was false, just ask him, just look him in the eye and say, would you, tomorrow, if you found out that Christianity was false, would you come and kill me, your nephew? Would you do that? Just straight up. And if he says yes, then, okay, run. But if he says no, then obviously God is not necessary for being able to determine what is right and wrong.
Exactly. I think it's clear to me that morality is, that there is no so-called absolute morality.
Well, there's not, right.
And that morality is, in fact, arbitrary, and human beings...
Well, now, hang on. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's not arbitrary. I mean, morality has to do with the circumstances that one is in, and it also is the result of a consensus that has been arrived at by society and culture at large as a result of applying knowledge over time, right? So it's not arbitrary. For example, we have laws, and these existed in pre-Christian cultures. You have laws against things like stealing and murder and robbery and stuff like that because it is an observable fact that these actions will result in harm to people. So the observable fact that those are actions with distinct consequences that are damaging is sufficient to say, well, we shouldn't do these things because we can observe that the consequences are damaging. The problem with the moral absolute viewpoint is that it tends to back people into this corner of inflexibility. A hilarious example that I always like to use was many years ago, like back in the 80s when Phil Donahue was still on television. He had this group of Christian fundamentalists on, right? And coincidentally enough, they were arguing about the content of textbooks. And at one point, Donahue brought up the question to them. Well, let's take, because they were getting on the subject of moral absolutes. And he said, okay, so let's say, would you agree that lying is wrong? And they said, well, yes. And he said, lying is wrong at all times. And they said, yes. And Donahue said, okay, if I knew where Anne Frank was hiding, I would lie to the Nazis. And there was this uncomfortable silence for 5 seconds, and then the guy said, oh, well, I just wouldn't say anything. But it backs you into these corners of inflexibility. Now, moral absolutists will tend to mock this whole concept of what they call situational ethics, which is the thing that they think makes morality sound like it's purely arbitrary. Whatever you feel, if it feels good, do it sort of attitude. But that's not the case. I mean, the situation that you're in matters. For example, there are situations in which killing another human being is not necessarily considered morally wrong, such as war, where you have guys shooting at you. Well, then the idea is you shoot back at them, and that's how that works. But of course, in a peaceful situation, killing people becomes murder, right? Because there's no, the circumstances dictating what is morally acceptable at the time.
Right, you can only make so many broad generalizations that are going to apply to every situation.
Yeah. Certainly.
And I was trying to break down morality for myself, and I think what I've come up with is breaking it down to justice and beneficence. What do you think about that? Justice meaning fairness, what is fair to others, and beneficence meaning, well, obviously harming others is a bad thing, and helping others is a good thing.
Okay. And the main reason for that, 2 points actually I want to bring up. I'll go with the first one first. In my view, morality is more of a contract that society has made among themselves. The whole reason that society can function and we can, live in groups of people and actually get things done is because we have moral rules that we live by. If we live next door to each other, I will agree that I won't take your stuff if you won't take mine. Now, what that allows us to do is actually go out and get more stuff. basically.
Well, unless you coexist, right?
Yeah, it's an agreement between us
Sure.
two so that we can, be happy with our lives. I can relax during the day knowing that you're not overrating my place. And I can do the same thing. I will agree not to kill you if you will agree not to kill me. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah. That's what makes it good, essentially.
And because and what you're talking about here are moral principles. They're not strictly rules, they're principles that apply in the situation that we're in. And so clearly, the human race, being a social species, must coexist peacefully in order to thrive, because if we didn't, we'd all be dead. So it is these are such common sense rules that they can stand on their own merits as being good principles to live by.
Yeah.
Not stealing stuff, not beating each other up or killing each other wantonly for no, good purpose.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get back and again address the point that your uncle made to you, and this has to do with a distinct criticism that I have with religious concepts of morality as a whole, which is they always bring up this whole thing of punishment or retribution, and heavenly reward or punishment in hell. And as you said, his question was, well, if I don't have judgment day to fear, or this or that or the other, what's to just stop me from going hog wild and being a lunatic? Well, there are several responses I could make to that. Now, first off, it is true that sanctions ought to be in place for people who do violate this, as you said, the social contract.
And there are.
And there are those sanctions in place, and they are, in many cases, a deterrent. They're not always a deterrent, right?
Sure.
But the fact is, it is still a very small minority of people in any given culture who make up the criminal element, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, and this is what I think runs contrary to the idea that like hardcore fundamentalist Christianity has about people in general, is that most folks just don't have this innate, uncontrollable, Mr. Hyde character to their personalities, where they just can't wait to go out and do horrible things. Most people just don't have an ingrained desire to do bad stuff, be dangerous, be harmful, be psychotic,
Rape,
be murderers. Yes, most people just have no desire to do that. What's to be gained from that kind of behavior? People do things not because they don't have a reason not to do them. People do things because they have a good reason to do them. Well, no, think about it.
Well, to go back to that, I have an immediate gain to go out and rape, pillage, and plunder. I can get that new 27-inch TV without having to fork over the $300 it's going to take to get it at my apartment. However, the problem is the Judgment Day idea. Yes, there's no God in heaven who's going to come down and stomp his foot on my head.
There's prison.
But there's prison, there's people coming after me, there's whoever I stole it from coming back and trying to, take it back. Mm-hmm. There's 101 problems that I'm going to have to worry about every single day after that fact.
But
I don't have one Judgment Day to look forward to. I have every single day after I do whatever this action is that I'm going to have to relive it.
Sure.
Either through personal guilt or through somebody coming and trying to kick my butt.
But the fact remains, right, that when you're in the store looking at, that 27-inch TV, the first thought in your head is not, how can I slip this under my coat and get it out of here, right? I mean, that's not your first thought.
True.
I mean, like I'd very much like to have a big 16, home theater thing, but I look at, okay, it costs $3,000. Well, my initial thought is, well, that's what I'm going to have to earn to buy that thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't immediately occur to me to try to take it by theft. That's what I'm saying. It's not just natural for most people to think of the bad way to do these things.
Yeah.
Right. How many times in a day do you have to subdue some kind of impulse to go out and, rape and pillage and murder and steal? And
I don't. I just don't have. And what also disturbs me about the religious attitude towards morality is that I think it can be summed up as, sort of by the slogan, morality, what's in it for me, right? I mean, it does seem that they always bring up, again, you have to ask them, if you didn't have a heaven to look forward to or a hell to fear, are you honestly saying to me that you would go out and do these bad things you're suggesting that you do? It seems like it's all based on, like secular morality is rooted in the observable fact actions have consequences, and most people just aren't that mean and nasty.
Yeah.
Religious morality seems to be based upon, well, if I do good stuff, then I'll get my nice eternal heavenly reward, but if I do bad stuff, I'll get eternal punishment. So I'd rather have the reward So that's the motivation for being good. That seems to be what the motivation is about. It's this desire for the reward, desire for the personal gain, and a fear of the punishment, as opposed to just any sort of practical altruism. I just don't go around thinking about killing and murdering and stealing all day. Sorry. Guess it makes me weird, but I don't think about those things. So it's, but it's interesting. Another comeback that you could consider for your uncle is there's a dilemma posed in philosophy that's well known. You may have heard of it. It's called the Euthyphro dilemma. I stumble over the pronunciation of that. And the criticism is that it makes just as little sense to say that morality is just this thing that we get given to us from God. Because there are a couple of problems then. If you say morality comes from God, either you have to why these moral precepts? Okay, why these rules and not others? And where does God get these moral precepts from? Can't even talk today. Where does God get these moral precepts from? Either he just makes them up, right? In which case they're every bit as arbitrary as the religious community criticizes secular morality for being, or he gets them from somewhere. He gets these moral precepts from somewhere, which implies a higher moral authority than God, which I don't think most Christians would want to go there.
Yeah.
So how do you answer the question, how does God come up with his moral rules if he's the guy handing us the moral rules we live by? Where does he get these ideas from?
Right. What is God's basis?
Yeah, and here's the question that I'm actually I'm going to do some reading up on this, because I've heard it several times, but I haven't actually done deep reading on it.
Yeah.
But my only concern about that is that if God makes them up himself, yes, he's still making them up, but that's not necessarily saying that's as good as us making them up.
Right.
Can your children make up just as good of moral ethics as the parent?
Right.
No, the parent has more experience in life. They have a better basis to put these moral rules on. Now, if God is a supreme being, would not he have a better basis and experience and such to put these moral rules on than just, us transient humans?
But if he created everything from the start, but now we're getting into other theological problems with Christianity, which have to do
many.
Which now we come all the way around to the problem of evil, which has its own entire set of
yes.
Well, shall we go into it? I mean, we can do that. The problem is having to do specifically with the idea of God being omniscient. Yes. At the time, he was creating the heavens and the earth and everything else.
Yes, but how does this link up to the Euthyphro?
Well, okay. If God, the problem of God creating the world with full foreknowledge of all the evils it would contain.
Yes.
Which is a problem when you're trying to argue for an all-powerful, omnibenevolent God. Okay. Now, you could say, well, God foresaw all the evils, so that could be his basis for then determining what the moral laws that we live by should be. But then you have to ask, well, why would an omnibenevolent, all-powerful God allow that circumstance to get the ball to get rolling on evil happening in the world in the first place? Yeah. And then they go back to free will, and then we come back to moral responsibility, and it's a big... It is so much easier to figure out that easier is not the reason that
come up with a social contract.
Well, it's Occam's razor, right? I mean, what's the more prosaic, practical, sensible response to this? And look, you're right, and it's the whole matter of social contract. And I like the term you used, Jeremy, which is justice and beneficence, which is that it's just it's nice to be nice, right? I mean, it works. It is the thing that allows us to coexist. If we did not have these rules, and if society was just chaos and anarchy. It wouldn't last very long. We'd all be dead. We wouldn't have gotten to where we are now if we didn't at least take some stab at setting ground rules that allowed all of us to coexist.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Let's take a stab.
Right. Martin and Ashley, as always, very insightful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
much.
And appreciate your call, and good luck with your uncle there.
Thanks. And if I may, I don't know if you guys have read the articles on reasonworks.com. But they're some of the best I have found on the internet, and I'd like to recommend to all the Christians out there who may be doubting their beliefs, if you go to reasonworks.com and you read the articles there, it's going to shake your faith harder than anything ever has, and that's a good thing.
Cool.
Oh, all right.
I haven't heard of that one before.
Well, yes, darn those guys.
And you have a shirt.
They stole my T-shirt idea.
know.
How dare they? No. But I'm sure they have a great website. Well, we'll definitely have a look at that. And feel free to call back anytime, Jeremy.
Okay, thanks a lot,
You
guys.
take care.
Thanks.
Okay. And just a reminder to folks like Jeremy and other unbelievers in the audience, we do have those bagel shop meetings. We have the
Yes.
Thursday night happy hours and
Monday Night Gamers.
and so all sorts of
Tuesday Night
opportunity.
Coffee.
Yeah, if you're an unbeliever living in Austin looking to meet other folks, feel free. Okay, we have a guy, let's see, Norman is on line 1. Let's see what he has to say. Is this Norman?
Hey guys.
How you doing?
Hey, I read something this week that kind of made me feel irritated with myself, and I called y'all last week because I said we were talking about the pledge, and I said that it wasn't a law, and then I said that if you insist that it is a law, then you are, and I said that you are lying.
Okay.
Well, it turns out that you weren't.
Well.
and I feel bad about having said that.
It's
quote,
okay.
Well, I mean, this quote made me think about it. It says, "You are never dedicated to something you have complete confidence in. No one is fanatically shouting that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. They know it's going to rise tomorrow. When people are fanatically dedicated to political or religious faith or any other kind of dogmas or goals, it's because they always have doubt about them, essentially. And I wanted to recognize that it was because I didn't have a great deal of confidence in what I was talking about that I was so emphatic. I apologize for that. It was at the very least rude.
Well, I very much admire you stepping up to the plate and saying that, although we weren't, holding it against you that you hadn't said that yet. But there's probably times we've shot our mouths off on this show too. But
everyone gets a little heated during debates and conversations.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nature of debate. I have often had circumstances where I've been, for example, engaged in, and you pointed this out to me too. I engage in a lot of email debates. In addition to doing this television show, and in email, when you don't have the filter of the person's face and what have you, sometimes your points can sound, I'm told that I'm a real bully in email. I try not to be. What I try to do is I try to just express my point of view very clearly, and if I read something that offends me, I respond bluntly, but it's never an attempt to attack the individual personally. Just say, but it's not true always that having opinions that you hold with conviction, that's not always a sign of insincerity. But it's true that when you find folks who respond to criticisms of their point of view with things like ad hominem attacks or personal insults, or they think that because you're criticizing their opinion of something, that means that you're attacking them as an individual and not criticizing the points they're making, that's a case maybe where you're dealing with an insecure person, and a lot of that has to do with what we bring up on the show many times, which is that I don't think people are taught in the educational process. They're not taught the art and the skills of critical thinking. Yeah. And most people aren't used to engaging in debates over sensitive issues, and so that's why you get, in many cases when you deal with people, just everyone getting angry and offended and mad and lobbing insults back and forth.
As far as what I did, I definitely don't see it as an ad hominem attack. I just saw it as a perspective. I wasn't attacking you guys at all, and that's why I didn't say y'all were liars. But
we very much admire you.
It wasn't taken as that, at least.
Yeah. Well, we very much admire you stepping up to the plate and saying these things. That's very good of you.
Cool deal. Let me ask you something real quick. The two of you seem to use the term science as a synonym for naturalism. Do I misunderstand your intent, or do neither of you see a real difference there? And the reason why I ask that is because this whole textbook issue, because evolution is not proven. It is absolutely, from what I understand, it's not a fact as we know it.
Well,
and that's why. But just get through it, and then I want to hear what you say. That's why I don't have evolution. I don't have a problem with evolution being in a textbook. But what I do have a problem with is it being presented as the only viable theory out there. And that's why I have a problem with folks that don't allow intelligent design, or the theory of intelligent design, to even be put into the textbook as though it is another option that is worthy of exploration. To me, when a naturalist wants to keep it out, it just shows a little bit of something like maybe an insincerity on their part, or a little bit of fear or doubt in their own position, that they don't allow it to come in even.
Okay, well, do you want to start? Because I've got a lot of comments, so I'm going to go ahead and organize.
Okay, I'll run with this first.
Okay.
Basically, with evolution, part of what you're talking about hinges on what the definition of a theory is. in science, a theory is something that is substantiated by evidence, meaning that they have a theory that animals evolved from earlier, copies, essentially. And so now we actually look out in the world, we find fossils, we find evidence of them evolving and stuff like that. Okay, now it's actually a theory, it's not a hypothesis anymore. The theory of evolution, that animals evolved from earlier species, is, as far as you and I are concerned, essentially a fact. The theory behind it is the exact mechanics behind it. And there are a couple different ideas from that, and those are being, duked it out, see, who's got a better idea of how they change.
You had Gould, who was there's natural selection, and then you had Gould, who was promoting punctuated equilibrium. And that's still very much a topic of debate.
Yeah, the fact that they came from earlier species is not in dispute. The dispute is
genetically,
exact mechanics.
the genetic underpinnings of evolution are solid. I'm sorry, were you done? Or are you
for right now, yes.
Okay. Right, well, I'll go ahead and tackle both of the topics. First off, science, in terms of science equals naturalism. The reason that science, I think, is trusted as being the way we go about stuff is because it involves a process that works. I mean, we know that it works.
The scientific method.
Well, the investigative process of science has been shown to work. I mean, it's practical, it makes sense, it has a good system of checks and balances in place by which you can eliminate false leads. Sure, people do bad science, but one of the values, of course, of science as a field is that there are such things as peer review. There are many other professionals in a given field will come and they will investigate the work being done by each other and make sure that everyone is on the straight and narrow and making sure everyone's facts are straight and that bias isn't entering into the process, which has happened before, which is when we had this whole nonsense with cold fusion a few years ago. And so it is a practical system that works in terms of finding out facts about stuff. Now, in terms of, so the reason that evolution is accepted by the scientific community, more so than like other ideas, is because at this time, this is where the preponderance of evidence seems to be pointing. And what with the discoveries that we have more and more, like the one we reported on the beginning of our show about our little salamander friend and what have you, we just seem to be getting more and more evidence from the fossil record and from the natural sciences shoring up this idea that life forms have the term evolution, which refers to changes in gene frequency over time as a result of adapting to changes in the environment. I mean, life forms do that, and we know they do that. And we are now just slowly, bits and pieces, filling in the gaps, and it's an ongoing process. We could find evidence tomorrow that could shoot down a ton of what we already think about how evolution works. That has happened. We're actually getting a lot of that right now happening in astronomy.
Yes.
In the years since the Hubble has been up, a lot of astronomy has had to be reevaluated and looked at, but that's what continues to go on. Now, in terms of intelligent design being introduced as a valid alternative scientific process, well, again, if there are scientists, there's like Michael Behe and a couple of other guys in the scientific community who are doing their best to advance that notion, and they're putting their ideas forth, and they're getting criticisms back and forth, and it's being discussed. I'm not a biologist, and you aren't either, as I understand. I can't speak like professionally or from a scientific standpoint on the criticisms that other people and professional scientists have with ideas. I mean, we could forward you to some websites.
Right, and I'm not a biologist either. I'm with you on that.
But I can tell you from a layman's perspective, there's one problem that I see immediately when you introduce the idea of intelligent design, and that would be, how do you know that's what you're looking at, and what is your frame of reference for determining what a designed thing would be in nature as opposed to a non-designed thing?
No, and that is at the real concern.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think that's something that's out there that's being debated.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a worthy debate.
Yeah.
And my issue is the fact that in textbooks, and this is, understand, I don't have like a 4th grade science textbook sitting in front of me, but it's my understanding that there aren't very many alternative viewpoints being expressed.
Okay, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, and that is because
I agree there is.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. And the reason is, in science, what you go with is the theory, is the conclusion that is best supported by the available evidence.
Here's just my point about... Okay,
well, let me give you another example. Let me give you another example.
Go ahead.
Let me just give you another. Let me give you an analogy. There are, for example, you won't find astrology being championed in astronomy textbooks as an alternative theory, right? And there's a reason for that, right? I mean, the current findings in astronomy, the evidence says what it says, and that's really what's appropriate to go into textbooks is what we know to be well supported at the time. Okay, it's not really appropriate to say now, okay, this is what's well supported, but there's this group of people over here who think differently, and this is how they think. It's like, well, fine, but who cares what someone else thinks unless they can bring to bear just as good evidence as what the prevailing theories are at the time. If there comes a day when intelligent design begins to have a really good, solid evidentiary basis and becomes accepted by the majority of the scientific community as a valid approach to that, then I'm sure you will start seeing, at that time, it will be appropriate to introduce ID into textbooks as something that really ought to be seriously discussed. But while it's still in the maybe phase, you can't really teach it as a science. The
only problem, and I totally agree, I understand, well, I don't agree, but I understand where you're coming from when you say that, and I don't really have so much like some kind of great argument against it. But what I do think that is unfair, that seems to be represented from the two of you, is that the scientific community is a unified body.
Well, they're not, no.
But see, that's my point. A lot of times what you represent as fact and as science is nothing more than a naturalistic ideology. And that, to me, isn't representative of the truth.
Well, I don't. Well, see, I think that's kind of a misrepresentation.
No, that's my understanding of what y'all say.
Okay, well, I'm sorry if we've given you that understanding. I'm trying to, let me just reiterate that that's not what I mean.
Okay, great. Okay. I understand that then.
I think good science is free of cant. It's free of ideology. Okay, once ideology begins to inform science, you're not doing science anymore. See, that's a big no-no. Sure,
I agree.
There are scientists who are motivated by their ideology, and this is a criticism of ID, is that it is known that most of the folks who are proponents of creationism, whether it's old-fashioned creation, whether it's young Earth, old Earth, or intelligent design, most of these folks are known to be people who have strong religious ideologies.
And also, the same who are proponents of evolution are also naturalists.
Yes, but naturalism isn't a religion in the same way that Christianity is.
It has a philosophy, it has a theology, and it has an ethical stance. I mean, there's no question about that.
Well,
we could look it up right now, and we would find that those things are very prevalent in naturalism.
Well, yeah, but you can have an ethical stance at the same time and not being promoting a specific sectarian point of view.
I understand.
You see what I mean?
But just because God isn't a part of the picture doesn't mean that it doesn't have very serious religious affiliations. I mean,
well, again, but there are.
It doesn't have to be supernatural to be religious, bro.
Well, that's very true. But again, you can, but there are people in the scientific community who run the gamut from being deeply religious to being entirely atheist, and all flavors in between. But the proper thing to do, regardless of what your personal ideology is as an individual, is if you're doing science, you check that at the door.
That's the idea.
While you're doing your work. And a concern is that the intelligent, and if there are people on the evolutionary side doing that, they shouldn't be doing that.
I agree.
But however, the reason I would argue that the reason you see perhaps more scientists in support of evolution who also happen to be religious unbelievers is that the evidence of evolution does take a lot of force out of arguments from design and other religious arguments. And again, there is a concern that a lot of the folks, well, let's be honest, all the folks in the ID camp or in the creationist camp their conclusions, their intelligent design creationism is a thing that is informed by their religious beliefs. And there's not really any way that it seems to be very hard to determine if they're doing it at all. That no, look, I'm able to separate my Christianity from my point of view that that there was some sort of creative divine force that made us and not evolution. It's very hard to see where, if at all, they're separating it. I don't know that they're separating it, and so that's why there's concern in the scientific community that you're getting exactly that sort of ideologically informed theorizing.
Hey, cool. I understand. I appreciate it. Hey,
I'll just okay. All right.
I mean, I just want other people to be able to make calls and stuff like that.
Yeah, but we appreciate hearing from you. And
forgive me for last week, guys.
Yeah. Hey, don't worry about it. And you have good questions.
Cool. Thanks for
take care.
And I got one more thing to go over this actually too.
Oh sure.
The theory that you're going to propose also, it should have some kind of evidentiary basis to it. Evolution, currently we can look back and look through layers of rocks and find all the different, the evolutionary path of the horse, all the way from, something that's about yay big, all the way up to, the Shire horses today, which are like 12 feet tall.
The Budweiser horses?
Yeah, that is one piece, that is one chunk of evidence for evolution. And now there's also the genetic evidence. Yeah. That's another chunk.
There are many different disciplines.
Yes, and there's more to this. We have a pile of evidence over here. And evolution kind of fits all that. It offers a good explanation for what we see. If you're going to propose another theory, it has to also explain all of this evidence in a better way. It has to offer more answers than evolution does. Then it will take over weight. You can't just offer an idea and say, well, there it is, and, I have no evidence. But it's another idea of how things could have happened.
Right. Well,
it has to back up the evidence.
That's an excellent point. We spoke about this last time when we were at dinner, because I had a few reservations. No, this was at Freebird's. Remember? Okay. Not at the party which you don't remember me being at. So who was having beer that night? In science, you have the issue of falsifiability.
Yes.
And so, in order to, one means of being able to test the validity of your theory is the question of falsifiability. And all falsifiability means is that you have to be, at the very least, just be able to imagine a way in which, this idea, like life evolved, right, would be falsifiable. Yeah. Like what would we have to see in order to make this idea not right? What would be one thing that we would see? Yeah. And the Scientific American issue that's out right now addresses the point about, it offers a way in which, for example, you could look at evolution, a thing that could falsify evolution. For example, evolution would be falsifiable if we were to see something, for example, see evidence in the fossil record of any sort of highly advanced and complex life form that had no antecedents at all that we could possibly find at all. Right? I mean, if there were evidence in the fossil record of a particular creature that, for all intents and purposes, all the evidence points to this creature, just one day it wasn't on the Earth, and the next day it was, and there were no, then that could be a thing that could falsify that all life forms on this planet necessarily evolved from earlier surgeon. But in the fossil record, we don't see that. Yeah. Okay, sure, there's gaps in the fossil record, but in the big picture of it all, we can draw the links and fill in the gaps. Yeah. And so far we've been doing it. We have not seen evidence of this spontaneously appearing thing that is a fully complex animal life form in the fossil record, which would indicate that maybe it was just poofed out of nothingness by a divine source. Not to say we won't see that, but we haven't seen it so far. So that's a way that evolution would be falsifiable, and so because we don't see that, we see that we can say then what we have is the preponderance of evidence shoring up evolution and not.
Yes.
Right. But now you have a different problem with creationism, the falsifiability of creationism. Yeah. Which is, again, how do you tell the difference between a created thing and a non-created thing? I've had many Christians, in response to that question, say, oh, well, everything was created. In which case I say, well, then what's your frame of reference? I mean, designed compared to what? Yeah. A designed thing versus a non-designed thing. So you ask them, well, what would a non-God designed life form look like? What would a non-God designed uniform look like? Would it be just a universe of absolute chaos in which things made sense? Made no sense, right? You had babies being born and then they turned into lampshades and then they stuff like that. But then think about it. How could you say that that's not necessarily design? It may be completely chaotic, but it could be a universe designed by a God who's insane. You never know. I mean, how could you? So there's a much bigger problem dealing with the falsifiability where creationism is concerned as it is a more practical natural science like evolution. So we've gone on too much about that, but I'm sure we'll talk to Norman again. Nice guy. Ed is on line 2, and he's been waiting a long time, so we appreciate Ed?
Hello.
Hey, we're sorry to keep you waiting.
That's okay.
How you doing?
Pretty good. I was just calling because I heard y'all giving the news earlier, and I didn't hear you say anything about this, but it seems like I heard something on Channel 8 about some lady that had won a judgment. I'm not sure if she was an atheist but she worked for some small city government in a small town here in Texas, and she refused to pray at their city meetings. And they said that she won like $1.7 million or something.
That's surprising.
They just announced that today on Channel 8, I think.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Well, I wish I could remember her name. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, we'll scan the news for that.
It's kind of a good news, so I thought, cool.
Yeah. Well, that's clearly a constitutional issue, right? I mean, you can't,
right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I just
want. I wonder if you get taxed on that. Or
I don't know. Well,
anyway, that was some good news, so I thought I'd call. I wish I could remember the name, but they announced it on, I believe it was Channel 8 today.
Okay. Well, if it's just on the news today, then we didn't have time to see it before the show came on, but we'll look into it.
Maybe in the paper too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, well, you can't force people to. Okay. All right. I'm being told that we're taping the program. Well, we tape the show every Sunday. Why is this? Oh, okay. That's right. Thank you for the reminder, control room.
Date.
I've completely forgotten about this now. Tuesday afternoons at 4:30 are the reruns of Atheist Experience, not live. We tape these shows, and so if you miss them, and you can always catch them Tuesday afternoons at 4:30.
This is being taped on the 7th.
That's right. So again, unless you're one of these newfangled TiVo maniacs, where you can just
TiVo rock.
Yeah, I know. Yes, you're sort of like. But that's thanks for the reminder. We tape the shows and we rerun them on Tuesdays at 4:30. So that's a way to see us if you miss us. Al is on line 3 and he's been waiting a while as well. Al?
Hello.
Hey, thanks for waiting.
No problem.
What's up?
Well, I was wondering, for quite a while, but I was about parapsychology as it relates to God and maybe your views on that, as far as psychic phenomenon and witnessed psychic phenomenon, that sort of thing. In my mind, it doesn't necessarily mean there's God. I mean, I have more of a Jungian psychological outlook on that, as far as, that man creates God. We put this more or less pool of psychic energy out there. You have groups of people over hundreds and hundreds of years thinking about this anthropomorphic deity or deities, and it essentially gives it almost an autonomous psychic energy, in effect. And I was wondering what you thought of that, and maybe God evolves too.
Well, we do know that religious beliefs evolve and they change with their times. Again, I'm not quite sure what you mean by the term autonomous psychic energy. I would agree, right, that when you have a belief that's prevalent in a culture, and it permeates that culture, and it propagates over time, then it simply becomes woven into that fabric of that culture, and in that sense, the belief does become real in that you have a powerful group of believers who are out there acting upon the beliefs, and therefore the belief then becomes. Well, you see the consequences of the belief, being acted out in culture.
Well, could it be that, in effect, as I said, God evolves with the mind of man, for lack of a better word? I mean, we seem to think that things begin, in a linear fashion when time is really like a continuum. So it's hard to grasp, I know, but maybe, point A and point B and, the time in between isn't necessarily the issue. It just is, in a certain sense, when you're dealing with thought on that level, time isn't the way we see it here. If such a state exists as, for lack of a better word, the spirit world or what have you.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm not, neither of us are quantum physicists. Maybe we'll get one on the show and we can discuss time with him. And now again, in terms of like psychic concepts, paranormal concepts, again, I haven't seen anything that I consider compelling evidence of those claims specifically. So again, I remain a skeptic where that's concerned. But again, getting back the point that you make, I think that it's valid to say that yes, concepts of God do change with changes in the culture. and the attitudes in the culture, the gods of ancient Rome, for example, were very much like the people in ancient Rome. They were partiers. They argued with each other. They fought. They went to war with one another. They were all corrupt and stuff. So you had the gods of ancient Rome, I think, were very much analogs for the people of ancient Rome. But of course, you don't see that necessarily in all cultures too. In some cultures, for example, in our own, I think what you have in concepts of God is you have people seeking a higher version of us, right? The ideal, an idealized person. In God, it's the person that people want to be, the person without any flaws, without any problems, with the ability to handle all situations, with the ability to be, all good, no flaws in character, or although if you study the Bible and the Judeo-Christian God's behavior, I think you see a lot of flaws in that God's character. But still, what you see, I think, in a lot of religious belief is for people they're seeking a sense of satisfaction and a sense of something better that they aren't getting from their secular lives. And gods, angels, messiahs, what have you, are that idealized version of humans that a lot of people want to aspire towards. They want to think of themselves in those terms. That's what I want to be, essentially, I think, is what's behind it. And yes, that changes. That concept and that definition of that will change depending upon what course the flow of society and the evolution of a society is taking. Yeah. So in that regard, I think your point's well taken. As far as psychic phenomena, I think way more evidence needs to be presented. But I think that it is true that ideas influence ideas, and people's ideas do feed off each other, and that's how ideas grow.
Oh, okay, interesting. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I still don't know what to think about it, but
yeah. Yes. But you're right. Religion, God does evolve. I'll agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, we got to run. We're running out of time, but thank you very much for your call. Okay. Interesting point. Well, I think we have time for Mark, but very little time, so we'll just let him get his question out. Mark? Hey, we're
very little time, huh?
Yeah, we're sorry. We,
it's
well,
okay.
You got a couple minutes. What do you?
I actually had a question about you earlier, and I know we've discussed this before I've called in.
Okay.
The caller was talking about the morals.
Sure.
And I think a few times I've kind of been misunderstood. I want to quantify this by saying I don't think you have to believe in God to be moral. Mm-hmm. You can have perfectly fine ethics as an atheist, mm-hmm. and I don't have a problem with that. The problem is this. I listen to you talk about, and you say words like good and bad. The problem with that is it's your idea of good and bad, and even if society says this is something good, or society says this is something bad, just because a majority of people say that doesn't make something in and of itself good or bad. And a lot of things, you talk about death, and I don't steal because I don't want somebody to steal from me, mm-hmm. and you do things because we want to live. But my problem is if we have evolved, if evolution is fact, we're nothing more than a higher evolved animal. Who cares if we die?
Well, I do. Yeah, I do.
If society ceases to exist tomorrow, we are dust. So who cares?
Well,
I do. And it's not going to matter.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we do, don't we? I mean,
but you won't know.
I care if I die tomorrow. I assume you care if you die tomorrow.
Well,
okay, so things do matter. Okay, I mean, our lives do matter.
Your car is going to end up in the junkyard, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 5 years from now. Why not put it there now? It's going to go there anyway.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying
that is what you're saying.
The analogy, but do you see the analogy?
Tomorrow, if you die right this second, you're not going to know. You're dead. If there's no life after death,
that's true. But I'm going to do whatever is in my power to stop from dying.
Well, correct. And I'm not. And that's not what I'm saying. You don't see. Here's
let me
tell
you. We're down to 60 seconds. So let me just sum it up for you. If indeed it is true that there's not a heaven or hell,
right,
and that we just evolved from pond slime, and that this is the only life we've got, then it's the only thing that can possibly matter.
Right.
Therefore, it does.
So why not live it up? Why not just do whatever you want to make you happy?
Because we've all got to get along.
Why?
I do. The things that I do that make me happy don't happen to involve harming other people. And if somebody decides that the things that they want to do to make them happy do involve harming other people, then those people are sanctioned by society, they become criminals, and they're set apart from us. So evolution rules matter regardless of where we came from. We're out of time, but thanks for your call. Take
No
care.
problem. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Talk to you next time. All right, that's our show for this weekend. Thanks to Ashley. Thanks to our great crew. There's our Love Wings. We are on live every Sunday, 4:30 p.m., and reruns every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Christians, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Have a good week.
And that.